didn't. When the cops get here, you have to be good and gone.
I can't help you anymore.
I know it's not your fault. You were born this way. You ate them. I believed you had to. I don't know why.
I smelt you. I didn't know I could do that.
I thought I was the only one. I don't want to hurt anybody.
Famous last words.
Bones and All is the new film from director Luca Guadagnino, who shot to like household name status with the tremendously popular Call Me By Your Name. And now he's back with Timothée Chalamet, the boy himself, who he discovered is a bit of a weird term, but sure, why don't we call it that, in Call Me By Your Name. And with this movie also of two lovers, just in this case, there's also Mark Rylance in his pants eating a dead woman's old body. Now, I find Guadagnino kind of an interesting director because he's really popular with a certain sector of audience, and I think of these people as being like A24 people, so people who love like arty films, but do want them to be like aesthetic, and also to be like letterbox happy, letterbox friendly. And so they need to be accessible movies, which is of course a good thing. I think films should speak to an audience. But then I find his fame kind of weird because, let's just check no one else is listening. Just lean in for a bit, just scooch a little closer. I don't think he's particularly good. I don't even think he's particularly notable. If I got as famous as Luca Guadagnino and all I'd ever done was adaptations and remakes and anything original I made had not been particularly liked, and even some of the remakes were pretty stinky movies, Suspiria 2018, stinky movie, then I don't know, I don't feel like I would be like a huge art house name. People just really like Call Me By Your Name, which is okay, it's a good movie, but like, it wasn't written by him. He got one of the most like famous screenwriters in history and then completely sidelined him for his last project, which everyone loved, which is a dick move if you ask me. Okay, I think I'm done, let's just, yeah, no one heard. It's okay. You can sit back now. So Guadagnino's got a kind of complex practice, which is ironic for someone who doesn't really have any notable trademarks or anything like that. And so I was interested to see him going into the horror genre again, after the, let's just say, mixed reception of his Suspiria remake. Stinky movie. And Bones and All, like all distinctive Guadagnino projects, of course, is adapted from a book. And it tells the story of these two young people who are on a road trip together and kind of finding young love and protecting each other against the problems in the world, but it also has this fantastical horror element in it. The most fantastical element of the film, of course, is that they live in a world where you can just like murder and eat someone and the police never find out, which is, I think, untrue, but anyway, that's the concept, let's just leave it on that. Now the film really has a punchy first half hour. We go from this quiet home life in this little town that Maren is living, through this traumatic event to this sudden like runaway, like living on the edge kind of thing. And then this woman goes and meets up with Mark Rylance's character, who is really creepy, but may also be a mentor of some kind, and we're kind of left guessing there. And then she meets Timothée Chalamet, and they immediately have this interest in each other. And for me, that's where the movie started to like lose its through line a bit. The ostensible through line of the film is Maren's quest for her mum, right? To find out about her own heritage, about what's going on with her, that kind of thing. And there's quite a lot of the what's going on with her thing, and nowhere near enough of the what is Maren's life journey like part for me. And I'll try and just keep it general to avoid like massive spoilers, but a big problem in the film for me is that about 2/3 of the way through, she does find her mum, and then the movie just kind of unaccountably carries on for about another half hour, and that's kind of wild. The movie's not that short, but a lot of it seems like it could just go. Now you might be thinking, listening to this, that it sounds like a kind of weird mix of genres, right? It's this road trip meets this kind of horror or psychological element. Now the thing about when you fuse two genres together, for me, is that you need to find something in that fusion, right? Like it needs to be an interesting collision between those things. And I think Bones and All, by and large, isn't really doing that. There is this horror element, but it's never really scary. There's occasional bits where it's disgusting, and certainly I heard some ears from the quite arty film festival audience that was in there watching it. But there's never like a sense of suspense for me. I never really felt worried about Maren, except for that scene quite near the start where she bites another girl, or the bit with Mark Rylance, which again is quite soon after that. And as for the road trip stuff, I think the road trip is by far the stronger part of the story. And I did find myself wondering halfway through, like, why does this have cannibals in it at all? Apart from that being kind of a hook of the film, or rather of the novel that it's based on. Because Guadagnino can't make up his own ideas. Like, just imagine it for a sec. What if this girl runs away from home after her dad disappears, and she's going to try and find out something about her mum, and she gets into a couple of sticky situations and then meets a young guy who's in a kind of similar situation to her. He's aimless and he's wandering. And then she goes with him and they have this journey together where they slowly fall in love with each other. But unfortunately, you know, events are really complex and often they're in danger. That just sounds like a road trip movie. It doesn't really seem like it needs to have its central premise. So I guess you're sitting there then thinking, why does it have cannibals in it? And one thing that I've heard a lot in the criticism around the film is that it's like a queer-coded movie. If you're not familiar with the idea of queer coding, it's that you tell a story that has subtext to do with like LGBTQ plus experiences, but the movie itself doesn't actually have those characters in it. There are no queer characters in the film, or at least not publicly. And so what we're doing is talking about queer experience, queer subtext in films that don't have it. It's a really interesting idea and often quite useful, especially when talking about fiction made before we had words for those kind of experiences in the public lexicon. And before people felt comfortable or safe in talking about their own sexuality. That said, I do feel like it's misapplied sometimes, and this is a good example of that. For me, I don't think Luca Guadagnino is making this as a queer-coded story. Guadagnino is a gay man. He's made films about gay men. I think he's perfectly capable of making a film about LGBTQ experiences and it actually being about that and, you know, having that in it. When people watch this and they say this story about teens realizing something about themselves that they find horrific and then not being able to fit into society, I get that you might want to say that's a queer coding. That's a story about young gay people finding it hard to accept their sexuality and the way in which it can distort families and like you find your own community, that kind of thing. What I kind of find weird about that framing is that in the world of Bones and All, it's not like an interpretable thing. If you're a cannibal, you have to eat people like semi-regularly, and that's horrible and leads to horrible outcomes for those people. So I find it kind of difficult to say that this is a movie subtextually about like young LGBTQ teens' experiences of coming out to themselves, when it's literally saying that aspect of their personality is objectively horrible and is something that they should try and like suppress, I guess. And again, like for what it's worth, I don't really read the film as that. And I think that when people call it queer coding, I think they're just looking for a sense of meaning in the movie. And I think they're looking for a sense of meaning in it because ultimately, like, there's not much under the hood of this movie. And I think you can be forgiven for thinking that there is, because Taylor Russell and Timothée Chalamet and Mark Rylance all do really good work here. They're really compelling on-screen presences, and it's really nicely shot as well. It has this really naturalistic style. But I would say all of the same things about a road trip movie like that, and you can just call it American Honey. It already exists, and it's a good movie. And American Honey has stuff under the hood. It's about things. And this, apart from the general stuff about like love and stuff like that, for me is not about something. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to get from the experience of watching this film. I didn't come away feeling illuminated or interested in the characters in particular. So for me, Bones and All has some interesting seasoning, get it? But unfortunately it's a little underfed. And the aftertaste, you know, it's pretty bland. So as it turns out, I'm still landing, Bones and All is actually just skin and bones. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed my review of Bones and All. And if you did like the film, like my very close colleague and friend, my business partner, in fact, loved it, and everyone else who I met had seen it, had really enjoyed it, then do let me know in the comments below. I think you're probably the majority on this one, but I'd love to have some chats. If you can convince me that Bones and All is good, that would be awesome. I'd love to have a movie that I like. That's it from me. But as ever, have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.